How Henry VIII's ego destroyed his own marriage. Picture the most dangerous dating situation in European history. The man choosing his next wife is Henry VIII, a king with 6 marriages, 2 executed queens, and a habit of changing wives the way other men change coats. And somewhere in northern Germany lives a quiet princess who has absolutely no idea she's about to become wife number 4. Her name is Anne of Cleves, and somehow, against all odds, she will become the only one of Henry's wives who walks away from him richer, safer, and very much alive. But the story starts with a portrait. In the late 1530s, Henry VIII was hunting for another bride. Politics demanded it. England had broken with the Catholic Church, which meant the king needed powerful Protestant allies on the continent. One of those allies was the stubborn German Duke John III, Duke of Cleves, father of Anne and her sister Amalia. So Henry did what any absolute monarch apparently thought was reasonable. He sent a painter. The artist was Hans Holbein the Younger, one of the greatest portrait painters in Europe. Henry gave him very specific instructions. Paint the girls exactly as they are, do not flatter them. The king wanted beauty, and he wanted the truth. Holbein travelled to Cleves and ran into a small problem. Anne and her sister came from a conservative household where modesty ruled the day. The young women kept their faces veiled, according to German custom, and Holbein had to patiently gain their trust before they finally allowed him to paint them. When he returned to England and presented the portraits, Henry made his choice almost immediately: Anne. Not necessarily because she was prettier, but because, as the elder daughter, she brought stronger political advantages. Romance had nothing to do with it. Anne travelled across Europe to meet her new husband. She was 24. Henry was nearly 50, and not aging gracefully. When Anne arrived in England in 1540, the king decided to do something theatrical. He disguised himself and secretly rode ahead to meet her at Rochester. Henry believed in the strange medieval idea of courtly love, where a woman would magically recognize her true lover, even in disguise. He burst into the room expecting admiration. Instead, Anne saw a large, unfamiliar man trying to grab her. Depending on the account, she either ignored him politely or panicked and called for help. Either way, she had absolutely no idea the stranger was the King of England. Henry rode away furious and humiliated. From that moment on, he claimed he was no longer attracted to her. When the two finally met properly, Henry's reaction was immediate and brutal. He complained that Anne looked nothing like her portrait. He blamed Hans Holbein for flattering her. He blamed his powerful minister Thomas Cromwell for arranging the match. And he reportedly muttered the line that history remembers: "She is nothing so fair as she hath been reported." But there was one problem. The wedding was already arranged. Politically, England could not afford to offend the powerful German alliance Anne represented. So Henry did something extraordinary. He married her anyway. If the first meeting was awkward, the wedding night was worse. Henry later complained that he found Anne unattractive and even claimed she smelled unpleasant. He insisted that their marriage had never been consummated. At the same time, he was extremely careful to make sure no one thought he was impotent. So doctors were brought in to testify that the king was perfectly capable of intimacy. In one especially awkward report, a physician proudly explained that the king had experienced 2 nocturnal emissions while sharing a bed with Anne. Too much information, even for the Tudor court. Henry wanted out, and he wanted out fast. Henry's advisors searched for a legal escape hatch. They found one. Years earlier, when Anne was just 11 years old, she had been briefly betrothed to a nobleman named Francis of Lorraine. The engagement had never been completed, but Henry's lawyers argued that this pre-contract meant Anne had never been legally free to marry the king in the first place. Convenient. The marriage was annulled on July 9, 1540. It had lasted only 6 months. At this point, Anne of Cleves faced the same fate many of Henry's wives faced: disgrace, exile, or worse. Instead, she did something incredibly clever. She agreed with everything. She accepted the annulment. She praised the king. She declared that the marriage had never been real. Henry was so relieved that he rewarded her generously. Anne received estates, wealth, and a royal income. She was given the honorary title, the king's beloved sister. Even more remarkable, she became the highest-ranking woman in England after the king's wife and daughters. In other words, she won the divorce. Anne remained friendly with Henry, which meant she had a front-row seat to the rest of his marital disasters. Only weeks after their annulment, Henry married Catherine Howard. That marriage ended the way many of Henry's marriages did, with an execution. During the scandal surrounding Catherine Howard's downfall, Henry even demanded that Anne return a ring Catherine had once given her. Even divorced, the king still tried to control the women around him. But Anne played the long game. Anne became close to Henry's children. She befriended Mary I of England, sent gifts to Edward VI, and formed a lasting connection with Elizabeth I. These relationships protected her long after Henry himself died. While other queens of Henry VIII became cautionary tales, Anne lived comfortably in England for years. She even attended Mary I's coronation. When she died in 1557 at age 41, Anne received an extraordinary honour. She was buried in Westminster Abbey. She is the only one of Henry VIII's wives buried there. And on her tomb lies a title history once tried to take from her: Anne of Cleves, Queen of England. Stories about kings usually end with crowns, battles, or grand monuments. But every once in a while, history hands us something stranger: a queen who wins by simply walking away alive. If you could feel the awkward silence in that Tudor court and the quiet intelligence behind Anne's smile, don't let her story fade into the background of Henry VIII's louder legends. History is full of women who understood something powerful. Sometimes survival is the most dangerous move of all. Sometimes the smartest queen in the room is the one who knows when to step aside, collect the reward, and live to see the kingdom change. Subscribe as we continue uncovering the lives of the dark heroines. Next time, we return to England, but the crown is no longer dealing with quiet survival. It is dealing with war. Armies will march, kingdoms will fracture, and one queen will refuse to watch her husband's throne collapse without a fight. She rallies soldiers, commands loyalty, and rides into the bloodiest civil war England has ever seen. Next time, Margaret of Anjou, the War Queen of England.